Are you ready to untangle from your past, recover from heartbreak, and revive your life? This is Soul CPR with your host, Ann Papayoti. We've all had soul-crushing experiences and lost ourselves in our pain, but there is a way out. On this podcast, Amazon best-selling author, award-winning life coach, and advice columnist Ann Papayoti helps us navigate the path from heartbreak to healing. So now, please welcome the host of Soul CPR, Ann Papayoti.
Resentment, spite, holding a grudge makes me think of the Grinch this time of year. What about you? Has your heart shrunk 2 sizes too small? Welcome to Soul CPR and thank you for tuning in. Today's topic was actually suggested by listeners, so thank you, Chrissy. I am sure many can benefit from what is shared today. Well, resentment is typically defined as a feeling of displeasure or ill will towards something or someone that you considered wronged you. You may even say that you felt insulted or injured, mistreated, or that a situation was unfair in some way. And these ill feelings of resentment can be triggered by being or the perception, let's say, of being taken advantage of, perhaps by being put down, dismissed, or by often people say feeling unseen, unheard, ignored, disrespected, maybe undermined or misunderstood. But sometimes we create these feelings by having unrealistic expectations of our world or the people in it. And sometimes it's by allowing other people's needs to be more important than our own. Can you relate to that? So sometimes it is our own disappointment and perhaps our own disapproval of someone else's actions or maybe the lack of their actions. In other words, our perspective or perhaps our opinion that has actually created the resentment that we carry. And when feelings of resentment are left unaddressed, the problems are left unresolved and relationships are left damaged. And ultimately, our mental and physical well-being can be compromised. So the bottom line, when we feel we've been wronged, whether it was intentional or not on the part of the other person, we can develop these feelings of ill will or this resentment toward them. And that can become a heavy burden, a weighty burden. And when we hold on to those negative emotions long after the event or situation has occurred and allow them to fester inside of us rather than face the person and talk respectfully about the action with the goal of letting go and moving on, it can impact not only our ability to heal that relationship, but also our ability to even reason with ourselves about relationships in general and trust others in building healthy relationships. It limits our lives. In extreme cases, we withdraw like the Grinch, engaging only to look for more evidence to remain resentful rather than for resolution and peace. In what relationship or relationships might you harbor resentment? Is there one at work, at school, among your friends, or within your family, with a spouse or a partner? I am sure that you can imagine how resentment might be applicable to intimate partner relationships, especially if there's been betrayals or ugliness and those who may have gone through difficult divorces, thinking there's just no resolution in the relationship behaviors. But let me say this. The resolution may not be with the other person, but with yourself. And letting go is always the lesson and the goal and the only path to peace. Now, through my years and, well, decades actually, working in separation and divorce support, I've seen those who fight just to fight, and it exhausts them. They don't only just carry feelings of ill will, they become physically ill. I've seen cancers and ulcers and autoimmune diseases diagnosed, and sadly, some never recover. The impact of carrying the weight of past hurts has been proven in studies to increase stress levels, which can lead to physical problems like high blood pressure and cardiovascular issues, weakened immunity, diabetes, even, and of course, mental health concerns like anxiety and depression. And that in itself should be motivation to let go, right? Well, whenever you may encounter even a memory, or let's say an email, or be in a situation to be with the person who wronged you, there may be any one of many negative emotions that resurface, from, let's say, just simple discomfort to bitterness to hostility to disgust. And in the short term, suppressing emotions like that may feel like a coping mechanism, and in fact, they can be. But in the long term, they can be devastating to your well being. So it's important to feel what we feel and acknowledge those feelings, even the negative feelings, and to learn to process them in a healthy way. But stuffing them down leads to more than the original issue. I read an interesting study. It appeared in a publication called Help Psychology. It found that adults who held on to anger and hostility over the course of a decade. Now that might sound like a long time to you, but believe me, there are people who hold grudges really well. Over a decade, experienced greater cognitive decline than those who were more apt to forgive. And there was another study, I believe in the same publication, who asked participants to think of a conflict in which they did not forgive someone while they were completing a physical test. And they did worse compared to another group who were asked to think of a time when they did forgive someone who wronged them while completing the same physical test. So, score 1 for the forgivers and 0 for the grudge holders. And at the same time, the grudge holders were also more likely to think that a hill looked steeper. It appeared steeper than the forgiving group, which just was indicative in general of a more pessimistic mindset. So why do we hold on to resentment even when it hurts us, when it's harmful to our mental and physical well-being? I don't know. I find it very interesting. I recommend always beginning with a self-reflection to create awareness, because all change begins within and it starts with awareness. And once you have that awareness, hopefully you gain some understanding of the reason behind the reason of holding on to grudges and either avoiding conflict or harboring unforgiveness. Now, avoiding conflict tends to be rooted in some kind of victim thinking, while harboring unforgiveness is rooted in some sort of conflict thinking. And they're both learned from your observations and experiences throughout your life, which have now created patterns that can be seen when you look back in what I call a life review and really kind of connect the dots. So, in other words, your current situation that maybe you're thinking of right now, when I asked you to think what relationship might you hold some resentment, it's not about just this current situation. Think back and try to remember the first time you recall feeling hurt by someone and never having that hurt validated. Was it on the playground? Was it in the classroom? Was it at home with the sibling, with your parents? That need to have that hurt validated never left you. And it's been piled on by every other hurt and unmet need, every other disappointment, and perhaps now, whatever and whomever is in front of you is really bearing the weight of your unhealed wounds. I hope that makes sense. Regardless, some of us have really a desperate need to be right. And we fight for that validation in a relationship. And we may never get it because the other person has what? They have a different experience and therefore a different perspective. So when it comes to letting go, often it's that need to be right or to at least feel heard by getting the last word that creates our own pain and suffering. Yeah. Do you see yourself in any of that, or someone you know that has that desperate need to be right or to feel heard and get that last word? Well, if this is left unchecked for too long, it becomes more and more difficult to kind of find common ground with that person on the other end of this engagement and to find a way to let go and move on from the situation. Some people identify with their anger so strongly and so much that to let go actually feels like they're giving up on themselves somehow, that they're losing. And that thought becomes something of a self-betrayal. But if you can acknowledge that every conflict has two sides and at least consider your role and what you might have done to contribute to it, you're on your way to healing. It is time for our first commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about that pathway to healing and how to let go. So don't go far, and we'll be back with more Soul CPR.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Thank you for tuning in today. We are talking about resentment and grudges and spite and holding on to that. And allowing it to kind of take over long after whatever has wronged us has happened. And so what do we do with that? It becomes physical ailments if we leave it unchecked for too long. So one thing that I'm saying is if we can at least acknowledge and consider that every conflict has two sides, just like every coin, then one thing that we can at least try to do is to consider our role in that and what we may have done to contribute to it. And that is the beginning on our way to healing. And then when we're willing to listen to the other person's perspective, then maybe we can make a plan for amends that is considerate of both of us, right? But this requires a very special ingredient. And that ingredient is empathy. And it starts with empathy for yourself, the feelings that you feel or have felt, as well as for the target of your resentment and their feelings. And when I talk about the feelings that you have felt, you've got to give yourself time to actually feel those negative feelings and to acknowledge them. We don't want to pretend they didn't exist. We want to acknowledge them, express them, and move on, but we want to express them in a healthy way. And it's not necessarily always to the other person because there may be a misunderstanding there or a misinterpretation, but we want to acknowledge them to ourselves, right? And empathy also might mean we need to examine our expectations. I mentioned expectations earlier. Our expectations of someone else are based on what we expect from the world, what we expect from, so we don't know what they have to give. There's a presupposition in neurolinguistics programming that if we could just presuppose that everyone's doing the best they can with what they have in that moment, whether it's emotional awareness or we don't know necessarily what they've gone through even 5 minutes before we've interacted with them. Whatever they have available to them in that moment, if we can presuppose that, we save ourselves a lot of grief. But anyway, if we can presuppose, that's one thing. But we can't always get there to empathy, can we? We can't always get there to want to approach someone else. Sometimes just the thought of approaching them to have that conversation, to hear their perspective, to plan for amends, considerate of both of us, is overwhelming. Why? Because we may overthink it. We replay the events. We continue the injustice in our minds. And this can be mixed with other emotions. Could be jealousy, and then that could make us feel guilty. There's a whole array, a whole gamut, depending on which relationship you're thinking of. Let's think of within the family. Maybe you feel like you're the sibling who does everything for your aging parents and the other siblings do very little. Perhaps at work, you feel passed over for a promotion. So there's some jealousy over the other person who did get the promotion. What is the relationship where you're feeling some resentment? How long have you carried it? How heavy has it become? And do you feel it in your body? All right. So how do we start to let go? First of all, assumptions are often our downfall. So before you conclude or condemn someone else's actions, at least try to step into their shoes. It just may be that what you thought were their intentions were inaccurate, and that it was your interpretation of their actions that made them hurtful for you. And as I always say, whatever someone else says or does isn't about you after all. It's just not. It's about them. And after stepping into their shoes and attempting to see it from their side or their angle, then step back. How can you depersonalize whatever it was? Is it possible that it wasn't about you at all and or not designed to hurt you at least? whether they weren't participating enough in the caregiving, or certainly the fact that they got the promotion instead of you. Or what was it that you're holding on to? Is it possible that whatever hurt you was because they were going through something on their own, or having a bad day, or behaved out of character at a certain moment in time? It doesn't mean that they may not owe you an apology per your value system, but how might your expectation of that apology and holding out, waiting for it, rather than asking for what you need, perhaps, be keeping you in pain and from having the relationship you desire? Have you reflected on it and come back from a place of wanting peace and address the circumstance with them? What keeps you in avoidance, or in silence, or in a stonewall position, and calling it perhaps something else? If you struggle with the ability to self-reflect and then approach the other person from a place of mutual respect with the intention of understanding and resolving, then it can be helpful, of course, to talk to a trusted third party who can be unbiased and objective. A counselor, a therapist, a life coach, to help you unpack your emotions and gain insights about patterns in your relationships. Remember I said when you look back, it's back there. I promise you, the root source. Help you figure out that root cause of your feelings and how they may be impacting other areas of your life, because they probably are. They can probably also help you identify healthy coping skills and learn how to resolve difficult situations sooner than later. You may also be blessed just to have a friend who doesn't say what you want to hear, but can truly be objective and help you get out of your head about things and maybe see things from a different perspective. But the question may also become, in any of those settings, how mad are you? How angry? Do you have thoughts of revenge like the Grinch did? Are you behaving in a passive-aggressive manner? Are you taking on some kind of power control dynamic? Are you withholding affection or time from a relationship that is expected to have it? Resentment can also lead to the ending of a relationship by the target of your grudge, because your behaviors can then become annoying or unacceptable for them. I can tell you that in my own life, I found that understanding why someone else's actions hurt me, why they hurt me, is about me. Their actions are about them. But why I feel hurt is about me. I had to get to know myself and understand myself, and why I would react negatively to someone else's choices. And when I did the work to reveal and then heal my original wounds, I was and am able to show up fully as me and allowing others to be who they are without the need to compromise who I am, or feel threatened by, or in competition with, or the need to please, or even to be understood by others. And that's a process of growth and maturing and letting go that brings peace. And I find that clients often tell me that they want peace. And I ask them, who have you not forgiven? And I often hear a list of people who have wronged them and the reasons why they do not deserve forgiveness. And I understand that. But listeners, please do not confuse forgiveness with condoning or excusing behaviors. I am sure that there have been some in your life who have done things to you or said things to you that are inexcusable and have truly created angst and trauma in your life. But think of forgiveness as the gift you give yourself. It is truly the letting go of what keeps you a prisoner to the ruminating thoughts and the painful memories and the sickness in your body, the sleepless nights, the lack of focus at work. However, the other person's behavior and choices have manifested for you. Forgiveness is a decision to not let someone else's behavior or someone else's choices ill affect you. Not one more day, not one more minute. Forgiveness is a choice that frees you to take responsibility for your own peace and happiness, not to spite someone, but in spite of someone or some circumstance. And when you discern who has truly hurt you and that which cannot be resolved in a guided approach with pure intention, and when you're struggling to get to the concept even of the fact that letting go is for you and not them, then I encourage you to invest some time and effort in learning and practicing stress management strategies and in coping skills so that you can heal yourself and the relationship with the most important person in this world, in your life, which is with you. It's time for our second break. Don't go far, and we're going to come back with some specific strategies for you to help heal your life. Don't go far. We'll be back with more Soul CPR.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back. Thank you for tuning in today. This is Soul CPR on Bold Brave TV. I'm Ann Papayotti, the host, and we are talking about resentment and holding grudges today, much like the Grinch, and why it's important that we learn to let go, because we're literally harming ourselves and potentially harming other relationships, and not even necessarily the one that we feel wronged us. It is all encompassing. It's going to impact other areas of our lives. So really building awareness around it and learning coping skills and mechanisms so we can free ourselves from these types of thoughts that we hold on to, and understanding the root cause is very important. So some coping strategies that we can learn. Uh, Journaling is something that comes up over and over again because it's a proven method of emotional release. So we said stuffing them down is not a healthy way to cope, but journaling is a proven method. Write down your feelings, even a letter to the person who hurt you. You don't need to send it, but you get the words and feelings out. I've even had clients do this to someone who's passed away. I've had people holding resentment against a deceased person in their lives. Can you imagine carrying that burden? Maybe you can. Maybe this is your truth as well. But that is a heavy, heavy, weighty burden. But to write the letter, to get the words out, to have that emotional release, or to journal as you're triggered and to help identify what triggers your feelings of resentment would be very good. And to recognize the behaviors that you present and to be aware, do you behave passively aggressively? Are you in a power control dynamic with someone that you feel has wronged you? Do you put on a shield of armor somehow, because you feel like you've been betrayed? So now do you bring that into other relationships as a form of protection? You can get a lot of self-awareness when you start writing down how you feel and what's happened, and what you'll find those triggers, and you'll find those identifying behaviors. Other things that have been suggested, of course, are engaging in a mindfulness practice like yoga or meditation or restorative breathing. All of these types of practices help decrease stress by calming your nervous system and helping you learn to really focus on the present moment, which, if you're in the present, you can't be in the past. And all of anything that has to do with resentment and grudges are past based. So, highly recommended. Any exercise that you enjoy, if you can begin or increase that activity, it's going to help boost your mood and those feel good hormones. And that might help you start to have that new perspective and ability to start letting go. And of course, like with anything we hear when it comes to stress, is to limit alcohol, watch your diet, review and improve your sleep routine. This is huge, including the timing, the lighting, the entire environment, from your face washing to your bed clothing to the last thing you read, watch, or listen to before falling asleep. Make your bed routine a true self-care practice. There are some very simple yoga poses that prime sleep that I love, from the standing forward fold to ragdoll to corpse pose, which you can imagine what that looks like, the outline from the crime shows, right? And just lying down, palms up, and letting the feet fall out. It's very relaxing and helps prime you for sleep. So just, you can look these up on YouTube or somewhere and find what these are, these yoga poses that help prime you for your best sleep. Legs up the wall is another one, I believe, that help. Practice focusing on the positive in your life. So just that positive thinking, get it out of that. Now, you heard the study that showed just that pessimistic attitude in general for the study participants. So practice focusing on the positive. Sometimes we do have to practice that, don't we? Because we may seem overwhelmed by things that are negative. So really look for the positive. And one thing I find is, if we practice on the positive in others, finding ways to compliment other people will help us get outside of ourselves, whether it's their eye color, their their earrings, their necktie, something, their smile, their demeanor, and to focus on the positive, the fact that someone held the door open for you at Costco. That one I'm very grateful for. Focusing on the positive in your days every day and count those. Learning about healthy boundaries. And when I say that, I repeat the word healthy because I did a show on boundaries versus barriers. There's a huge difference. And I find that some people who hold grudges really use the word boundaries incorrectly, and they're really putting up barriers. So you may want to go back and listen to that show if you've not heard it. Another strategy or tip would be learning and practicing emotional intelligence, which is really all about the capacity to recognize, interpret, and regulate your own emotions, as well as understand the emotions of others to help improve your personal well-being and your interpersonal relationships. So emotional intelligence is huge. Now, I was talking about forgiveness as well before the break, and it's no surprise, I'm sure, that forgiveness actually can do wonders for our physical well-being, for our body. There was a 2014 study that showed people who were able to forgive felt they had a lighter physical burden. They were literally able to jump higher than those who were less forgiving or more unforgiving, however you want to word that. Able to jump higher. Interesting. And as we said earlier, we do carry stress in our bodies and it manifests as physical ailments. And over time, our bodies are going to succumb to the weight and pressure of this pent up, I'm going to call it aggression, because that's what it is. It's just we've got it all inside of us. If we don't do something about it in a healthy and productive way, it's going to implode or explode. That's why I said, how angry are you? Do you think about revenge? Because that would be an unhealthy explosion. The implosion is going to be those physical elements. So when you're ready to let go and leave resentment in the past, you just may find that everything in life is a little easier and a little better, a little lighter. And they've proven this. Now, one thing that I've noticed in clients and in my work with clients is that some make their displeasure or really abundantly clear to the people that they hold resentment towards. And others kind of keep their feelings to themselves. So, which is it for you? Think about that in your self reflection if this is something that you struggle with. And is holding a grudge intentional and conscious, or are you not even aware of it? Is it coming up for you now because we're talking about it? But whatever it is, that bitterness is going to hurt you more than the person and the event that started it, right? And I hope that, if nothing else, that you've been convinced of that today. Gratitude, no matter what it is in life, every psychologist tells us that the practice of gratitude is the key to unlock our best lives. It's to come out of grief, it's to come out of loss, it's to come out of the darkness of depression, it's to come out of resentment. So learning to practice gratitude is a huge key to succeeding if you want to heal from this. Now, it's never easy to do, is it? All right, I would say that. It's never quite so easy when you're in an ungrateful state or you've been hurt. It can take a long time to practice this. Doesn't mean you have to practice this about the situation, but just practicing gratitude in general in life can help you start releasing negativity in general and start moving towards a more positive mindset. And that whole thing together works together, mind and body. And that's Odie barking. I apologize. The neighbor's dog's outside barking. But all of that allows us to move forward. So another way to help you learn and practice gratitude, again, is a gratitude journal. And I have had people literally change their lives by starting to write down what they're grateful for each day. And that, for part of that sleep routine at night, I would say is a great way to start. If you write it down at the end of the day, coming up with at least 3 things that you're grateful for from that day. It at least lets you wrap up the day and go to bed at night with something positive on your mind. And then if you can add to that or increase that number. I had a client where a mother-daughter trying to improve their relationships, they made that a practice together. They did gratitude journals that they would then share. And it gave them something to talk about rather than always having this friction in their relationship. It became their agenda, if you will, for their conversations. And their practice grew and grew where they had 10 things daily, and they shared this in their weekly conversations. And after they reviewed their gratitude journals, then whatever they talked about next, it was always positive and kept them in a spirit of mutual respect and a place of love and compassion from the heart. And I can tell you that when you can heal yourself with gratitude and you can heal relationships with gratitude, they were a wonderful example of that. So I hope that that is something that you will consider in your life as a potential practice. Now, last week on the show, my guest introduced you to tapping, or she may not even been the first guest that introduced you to tapping, but that was another thing. So if you're struggling with letting go, you can go on to YouTube and find a video on EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, and it is about tapping, and there are the different meridian points where you tap and you use statements. It's the top. You start with the karate chop on your hand, and then it's the top of the head, the side of your eye, underneath, under your nose, the chin, the collarbone, and then underneath the arms. Okay, and you're saying statements at the same time about what you want to let go of. You can find an example online, and that's a great other way to reduce stress and to choose to let go of something that you need to let go of. And in this case, it's maybe resentment, a grudge, spite, etc. Okay. It is time for our final break. And when we come back, I've got some closing thoughts for you on the Grinch. Don't go far. We'll be back with more Soul CPR.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, Hope, and Support for Caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Welcome back, everyone. We're talking about resentment, and I just want to say, don't let the Grinch steal your joy. Just don't. I'm going to consider the Grinch as truly the king of the grudge, right? So what do you need to let go of this year? And let's just face it, relationships are complex. But if we can just recognize that all individuals are bringing their experiences, thoughts, beliefs, opinions, needs, styles of communication to the table, what would be different if we thought of each of us as different rather than difficult, and learn to respectfully disagree and allow individualism without criticism? Regardless, it's important to process these grudge-like emotions, but holding on to those feelings is typically unhealthy for all involved. It's just not advisable to avoid dealing with uncomfortable situations, but it's also not advisable to rush to that forgiveness. It's best to give yourself some time to grieve, which includes being angry. And if you need to wallow a bit, do that too. Just don't let yourself get stuck there and let it become your way of being, your way of living. You may turn green and live on a mountain outside of Whoville and miss out on the joy that was meant to be yours all along. So make it a goal to work through the issues and move on. Find your voice and use it to get what you truly need in relationships. The lesson, my friends, is always in letting go. The work is in finding that which you must really let go of to be able to heal your life. As this episode of Soul CPR comes to a close, remember that healing is not a linear journey, but rather a process of profound transformation. If today's story resonated with you, then please share this podcast with those who might need a lifeline of their own. Subscribe, rate, and leave a review to help us reach more hearts. You can connect with me on social media, on Facebook at Skyview Coaching, Instagram, LinkedIn, and X at Ann Papayotti, and let me know your thoughts, your stories, and the topics you'd like to explore in future episodes. I thank Chrissy for giving me the idea for today's show. And there's my website on screen, skyviewcoaching.com. You can also scan the QR code to go straight to my site. Also, my book, The Gift of Shift, co-authored with Tracy McDonald, is available for you to purchase at Amazon or possibly from your local book retailer. That book is really good if you're struggling with some different issues. Like, there is a chapter on forgiveness. There's a chapter on finding hope. There's a chapter on being true to yourself. And they're all little short chapters. So if you're not a big reader, and also if you're trying to learn how to journal, it's also a guided journal. So as you read each short chapter, there's 5 coaching questions following the chapter, and then a guided journal to help you rewrite your story in a more empowering way. or to be reminded of your strengths that helped you get through a certain circumstance so you can apply those strengths to something you're going through now. So I hope that that book can help you or someone in your life. And I love to hear from you, so do reach out. And until next time, may you find strength in your journey and courage in your vulnerability. And I thank you for listening. Breathe deeply, love openly, and live soulfully. Good day.
This has been Soul CPR with host Ann Papayotti. Breathe life back into your spirit with each episode, where she and special guests explore the relationships that hurt us and discover that healing can only begin with you. Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.